among the worst films of the year.
Worse, it reeks of intellectualized noirishness.
It stinks. It stinks.
So I was pleasantly surprised with Shazam. It's a film that very much lives up to the expectations that it should have, or the audience should have in it. And it absolutely hits that target and mark every time perfectly. It's still a film that very much is in the DCEU. They intentionally include an appearance, although I'm not too sure if it's by the original actor portraying it, of a DCEU character and the specific appearance that they have. But it's almost as if they're aware of the problems that they've had coming before. They can't just magically erase them the way that Aquaman kind of tried to ignore them. So they found a way of using the story and the elements of this specific character to be able to include and comment on them. Namely, the Grimdark is there from Man of Steel, Suicide Squad, and Batman vs. Superman. But it specifically only exists around the villain. Anytime the villain is on screen, there is Grimdark. But that is because he actually has been, he's the personification of grim and dark. He's the villain that is carrying that around, and he brings it into scenes. It's not that every scene is automatically grim and dark. It's that scenes are neutral, and depending on if the hero or the villain enter it, they switch from grimdark to happy-go-lucky, which is very much the point of the Shazam character. Originally named Captain Marvel, it was always very happy-go-lucky. Like, people think of Superman as the big blue Boy Scout, but he's morally ambiguous in comparison to Billy Batson, who is literally a child with the ability of Superman. It's the fulfillment of that power fantasy writ large. And instead of going really, frankly, douchey with it, they instead leaned in heavily to the childhood aspect, the naivety and the joy that would come from suddenly waking up one day and finding out that you have these abilities. It's a joyful film, spotted with elements of what would be hyper-violence in other films, but are done in just enough way that you can see, okay, off-screen something horrible just happened, but we're not here to see those horrible things. We're here to see this bright and colorful character manage to solve the problems of these horrible things, to end the horrible things. Everyone's performances are fantastic. Very specifically, the version of Savannah that they managed to put on screen is fantastic. For a series that doesn't really do villains very well, they certainly have a bad history of interpretations. This version of Savannah, who's never really gotten a big screen treatment before, is perfect. He's so overtly super villainous, and yet you can see from his perspective why he is super villainous. There's a little moment in the film when one of the adopted brothers of Billy Batson is confronted by Savannah, and they don't know each other. They've never been introduced. It's not like Savannah's this well-known villain, but Freddy takes one look at him and starts screaming, "Supervillain, supervillain," because things should be that blatant and simple in a Shazam film, where you take one look at someone and you know that's a supervillain. You take another look at someone and you know that's a superhero. Things are meant to be that cartoonishly simple. See Shazam in theaters. It's not like it's going to be a big display that you have to see on the big screen. It's not like Infinity War in that sense, but it's absolutely enjoyable. And This is the kind of stuff from DC that should be supported. What I'm really here for is the character on screen and what they do. So we're gonna have some fun, and that's it. His named Captain Marvel, and there's a whole legal whatever about that. You'll notice in Captain Marvel, no one ever calls Carol Captain Marvel either. At no point does anyone say their characters' names. They don't say, oh yes, I'm. Instead, it's really worth watching. These aren't complaints. This is merely, oh, okay, this is merely noting that they're aware of something, and they're putting it in there, while also being aware of other things and putting them in there. There's a nice little cameo from Mastermind. There's a nice little cameo from Shazam's other major villain. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm not going to spoil it because it's probably going to be the sequel. And of course, there's a reference to The Rock as Black Adam, which was their intentional use of the Fawcett characters. That's what these are all called, the Fawcett characters, because they used to be produced by a company called Fawcett that was later purchased by DC. I'm happy that they have decided to move away from making Black Adam the primary character from the Fawcett universe they're going to use, and have just gone full tilt with the rest of the Marvels, or Shazams. I prefer calling them the Marvel family. It works better as the Marvel family instead of the Shazam family, especially since none of them can say their name. And I liked the use of that throughout as a tongue-in-cheek reference. Trailer certainly is, and you have to be careful with DCEU trailers misleading you on things. But I was really happy to see that they managed to get the spirit of it while making the film actually more interesting by not... It's funny that they, in their misrepresentation of the eventual film, they made the actual film more interesting, far more interesting to watch. I was really happy to see, and no spoilers, there's a moment in the third act where something occurs that I was completely expecting as a fan of the comics to occur, and it was all laid out with the inclusion of the Shazam family, all the other adopted kids. But I was expecting them to hold back until the sequel. I'm really happy they didn't, because this is specifically, Shazam is supposed to be a product that you go crazy with. You go as far as you can with the cartoonish aspects. If anything, I was just a little annoyed that they didn't have a direct Taki-Tani in it, but they did make repeated references to tigers being something that Billy turns to when he is afraid. His childhood go-to is stuffed tigers. It has a big impact on him at the beginning. It has a big impact on him when he's becoming a full-fledged hero. I absolutely suggest you go see Shazam in theaters. It's not like it's going to be a big display that you have to see on the big screen. It's not like Infinity War in that sense. But it's absolutely enjoyable, and this is the kind of stuff from DC that should be supported, hands down. And I very much hope it is a success, and they get the point that this is the kind of thing their audiences want.
Sherman, I just realized you insulted me. Now you will die.
Hey, Nutnik, your shoes untied.
From here they appear to be tied, but I will go in for a closer look.
Taxi! To the airport!
On closer inspection, these are loafers.